welcome back, and we are about to start lesson 1. This is the most important thing, and this is where I find most people go wrong when they are in the business world and they're starting to work with tech, they're starting to work with digital concept. So I'm going to share my slides here, and then I'm going to give you a couple of examples to basically make it really relatable, okay? So the most important thing I want you to know is that traditional products are built in a linear process and digital products are built in a circular process. So stay with me. I am going to teach you exactly what that means. Traditional products are going to be anything that essentially they're like hardware products. So like the chair you might be sitting on right now, or the car that you drive. But also they can be things like strategies, and they can be things like legal documents. And digital products are essentially apps, sites, and algorithms. So everything in the digital software space. So now we are going to play a little game. Imagine that you work in a car company, and I'm going to choose a French car company because I love spending time in France. So let's imagine that you work in Renault, and you're doing really well there, and you're basically now kind of really close to the C-suite, but you're not quite there yet. But you do know the CEO, and essentially the CEO says to you, "Hey, smart person, I've really been watching what you're doing, and now essentially I want you to come up with an idea for a new line of cars that we are going to release." So you're going to be like, "Oh my God, yay." So what is the first thing that you're going to do? If you're told, okay, you need to come up with a new idea for a new line of cars for Renault, what are you going to do? Well, number one is you are basically going to research the market. You're going to see, okay, who's buying cars now, and who is going to be buying more cars in the future, right? So essentially you're looking for a section of the population that already has money to buy your kind of cars and is going to keep on getting more money so they can, buy more cars. And well, maybe you choose women working in urban areas. So basically the professional women. And so you're thinking, well, this section of the population is a good one to pick because more women are entering the workforce, more women are earning more money. And essentially because of that, this is a population that is going to keep on getting more and more earning potential. So we have chosen women who are working in professional environments in urban areas. That is our target market. All right, great. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get a bunch of designers in to create some prototypes for you. And you're going to say, okay, our target customer is this, fabulous woman. Maybe she's working for L'Oreal and she lives in Paris. And I don't know, she's a marketing manager in L'Oreal. And this is kind of our target customer. So think about her journey and how she's going to use the car. Maybe for like day trips and, going for, driving the car to Rome or whatever you might be doing. And you probably want it to be quite small so it fits into tight parking spaces. This is your target customer. And so the designers are going to make a prototype, and you can see that a prototype is not going to be like the actual real car. And at that point, when you have some prototypes, you are going to invite a focus group of your target customers, these fabulous women. And these fabulous women are going to give you some feedback about your prototype. And so then you would adjust the prototype with a designer. And once, you've adjusted the prototype, what are you going to do? You're going to give it to the engineers. And the engineers are then going to manufacture this car. And okay, so obviously at this point, you're spending lots and lots of money. And what's going to happen next? Well, and now I have a question for you. So here you are on the car showroom. This is the car, and you are now entering the marketing and sales aspect of the business cycle. And so you've got this car, and you've done an advertising campaign, you've done a PR campaign, and all of this is really expensive. And you've got really nice sales showrooms for your cars. And, you've got people in nice suits with glossy hair selling these cars. People are going for test drives and so on. Now, here's my question to you. What is the best possible thing? What's the best possible thing that can happen right now? Think about it. What's the best possible thing? Well, I will tell you. The best possible thing is that, this fabulous lady goes and buys the car. And that's a good thing, right? Like you're working in a car manufacturer, you have come up with an idea with this target market and this car, you want to get some revenue. But then when she buys the car, what happens? Do you know? Is she going to be driving the car, or maybe she bought it for her grandpa? So, you're trying to make a fabulous, fashionable lady car, but it becomes a grandpa car. Is that a success? I don't know. Think about it. Okay. And also, who is she? Is she the fabulous, single woman working at L'Oreal that you were originally targeting, who's going on day trips and going to the spa? Or is she actually a really frustrated single mother who is trying to stuff her 3 children into this car and actually she finds it really, really uncomfortable? Or is it that, okay, it is the target customer. So she is this fabulous woman working at L'Oreal. And actually, she is using the car as designated, as you intended, but she just finds it annoying. Like the seats are squeaky and the cup holder is in the right place, or the cup holder is in the wrong place. And like she basically finds the experience kind of quite annoying. When are you, like, how are you going to find out about this? When would you find out about this? Would you ever find out about this? I mean, you probably would, but you would do so basically when it's too late. So you might find out about it in like review blogs, in car magazines. And by that point, can you change anything? Like you're kind of quite limited. You're quite limited in what you can actually do because the customer already has the car. So unless the car is a total disaster, in which case you need to do a recall, you kind of have to start again. And let's also look at the best case scenario. Imagine your target customer is using the car and she loves it. And then your boss says to you, hey, smart person, you've done so well. I want you to then come up with another model. And you're going to be like, crap, I have to go and do this whole thing again. Like, what have you learned? And you haven't really learned anything because you don't know who really your target customer is. You don't know how she's using the car. You don't know what she likes, what she doesn't like. So essentially, when you get given this task again, you are literally just repeating that process and you haven't really learned much. So what I've shown you so far is you've had these stages: ideation, design, engineering, sales and marketing. But then if all of this goes well and she buys the car, she then drives away with the car. And unless there is a serious problem, you're never going to hear from her again and you don't know how she uses the car. And this is basically how the business world has been operating for millennia before software came in and ate the world. That's a quote from Mark Andreessen. So this is, if you are in the traditional business world, which is kind of where I came from, that private equity world, usually that kind of MBA world. If you worked in banking, if you're working in a traditional kind of legal business, this is usually how we do things. This is what we are used to. And you think about it, because the product has to be perfect at this stage, the car has to be absolutely spot on by the time it is sold to the customer. This process includes lots and lots of planning. Because this process is so expensive, it also involves lots and lots of forecasting. And basically, you have very little room for error and you're operating blind. You don't really know what's going to happen at stage 4 until it happens. So in my view, this is really, really risky. And because it is so risky, it emphasizes basically trying to forecast and trying to foresee everything that you possibly can, because you really want to be totally ready as a business and as a business person for stage 4. Because if at stage 4, she is like, no, this car is crap, you're basically totally screwed. Okay. So that's the technical definition. Okay, so that is the traditional business world. Now, let's look at the digital world. And we are going to pretend that now we are making it out. We're going to pretend that you and I have gone back in time and we are working with Travis Kalanick and that he is actually, a nice person and not a total dick. And so you and I are working with Travis Kalanick and essentially we have this idea for a ride hailing app, and we're thinking we're going to call it Uber. And essentially, we know that, getting a taxi is super annoying. And we're thinking, well, if we could have this app where essentially, we could connect users to taxis where they could literally just press a few buttons, then we think we could really have a business here. So we have this idea. What are we going to do? So we would actually do the same thing that, we would have done if we worked at Renault. We would study the market. We'd basically see, okay, who's getting taxis? Who are the taxi drivers? What are the costs? What are the average incomes of people getting taxis? So we would do this kind of McKinsey type market analysis, although we wouldn't go as deep as McKinsey does, obviously, but we would spend some time in research. Okay. And then we see actually there is a market opportunity. We see that we're going to target maybe people who are getting nicer cars, so maybe people who are getting limos to drive them around. This is actually what Uber did, by the way. And what are we going to do next? Once we have defined our target customer, so, in Uber's case, it was basically people who are quite wealthy, people with higher income brackets who are hailing quite nice taxis like limo services. Once we define that target market, we do what we would have done at Renault. We speak to designers and we get a prototype. So this thing here, that's basically a prototype of what an app would look like. And you can see that it's literally drawn with a couple of pens. So prototyping literally starts like this. It's not super technical. And so you would prototype with designers to essentially make this thing. So far, so good. And then again, you would get some feedback from your target users on whether, the app design actually makes any sense and whether they would use it. You then get their feedback and you remake the prototype. So basically, literally exactly the same as Renault. What do you do next? Once you've got your prototype, you give it to engineers. In the software example, you give it to software engineers. So literally this is code, as opposed to, those engineers that I showed you in a manufacturing plant. But the concept is the same. You create a prototype, which is kind of a rough design. You test it with your target users, and then you give it to engineers, and then engineers turn it into basically a living, breathing thing. Okay, so far, so similar. And you're thinking, Sophia, what the hell am I doing here? You're not teaching me anything new. Oh, but wait, all is about to be revealed. Okay, so then this is stage 4. So remember in our Renault example, you would release your car onto your fancy showroom where you have your, salespeople with their glossy hair and their nice suits selling the car. So the equivalent here with an app is that you're going to release it onto the Apple App Store or Google Play. So with Uber, it was actually the Apple App Store. And, within Tech for Non-Techies, we can tell you why premium apps often go out on Apple, but this is not for today. So basically, this is your showroom. You release the app. So far, exactly the same. But what is stage 5? My question for you. Think about it. What is stage 5? This is where things get interesting. Basically, people use your app. So, in our case, Uber, people download Uber, they start using it, and then you can see how they're using it. So it's like you are sitting there in the app being like, oh, okay, this person downloaded our app, and this is the time when they used us to get a taxi. This is where they stopped using us. This is the screen that everybody seems to drop off at. So clearly there's something annoying or difficult in the screen. And you can basically sit there in this app and see, okay, what are people loving and what are people hating? What's annoying people and what are people sharing? And this is kind of like the equivalent as if okay, in our Renault example, imagine the customer buys the car and then you as the car designer, you're like, okay, great. I'm going to get in with you and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to take notes about how you use the car, like where you drive it, what you do, who you're picking up in it, and who's actually driving the car. So, if you did that with your car customers, they would think you're a stalker and probably report you to the police. And yeah, this is literally what happens when we are making apps, when we're making sites, and when we are making algorithms. And the reason why this is a good thing is that then we, as the digital creators, like as the app developers, as the innovators, we can then see, okay, how are people using our product, and then improve it for the next version. So once you've seen what's working and what's not working, what happens? You come up with new ideas to improve it. And this is why the apps on your phone are changing all of the time, because essentially the app developers are constantly saying, what are people loving? What are people hating? Where can we maybe charge? Where do we need to drop our prices? So essentially, they're constantly coming up with new ideas, and they're constantly testing them, and they're constantly releasing. And so essentially, when you are creating digital products, you're living in this digital circular world. Remember the Renault example, the car example, that was that linear thing where essentially once the product leaves, you kind of don't know what happens again. In this case, you, as the maker, the digital innovator, you're basically co-creating with the customer. So digital products are always going from idea to design to coding, which is development, then to release. Then once the product is released, people use it, then the digital innovators, they can analyze how are people using it, and based on what they've learned in that analysis, they can come up with new ideas to make it better. And then they basically get those ideas designed, those ideas get developed, they get released, the results get analyzed. If the results look great, you carry on going. If the results look terrible, you're like, okay, scrap that feature, get rid of it, move on. And this is basically how digital products are made. So what does this show you? Why is this so different? And why is it so important that I have included this in lesson 1? This is literally like the key to the digital mindset. This is the key to agile development. This is the key to design thinking. This thing, like what I have just taught you, if you don't listen to anything I ever say again, just remember this: linear versus circular. What this shows you is that a digital product is constantly living. It is constantly being updated. And because it is constantly being updated, planning and analysis don't really feature that much, because it's much more of a kind of learning by doing approach. And this is the mistake that I see people from the traditional business world make, because people who came from the same kind of background as me, which was, media and then finance, we were always brought up in a world where everything we do has to be perfect. The reports that we create for our clients have to be perfect. The financial models that we create have to be perfect. Everything has to be checked 50 zillion times. In this digital world, that is literally going to be a waste of time. Yes, you want to do some analysis, but essentially the best thing you can do is get something out there, see how people use it, and based on those results, you adjust. So, to sum up, in the traditional business world, not only is the process linear, but that production process emphasizes perfection and it emphasizes planning. When you move into the digital world, planning and perfection, they're literally not a thing. They do not exist. You have to let that go. And this is where so many business leaders go wrong when they move into the tech world, because they are expecting plans, they're expecting too much forecasting, which is basically going to be impossible. So you have to let that go, and you have to understand that actually we are co-creating with our users. And in order for you to learn how to do that, you have to know how to work with a product team that makes digital products. And this is what we're going to go into in the next lesson. So stay tuned and thanks for watching.